Hey, what's up? And thank you for listening to Operation Agency Freedom, where we are bringing you top secret advice from the world's most badass digital agency owners. These amazing men and women are sharing their stories of how they have built 6, 7, and 8-figure digital agencies and how you can too. Of course, my name is Chris Martinez. I am the CEO of Dude, where we help digital agencies by giving them the people, processes, and the education so that they can take on more projects and scale profitably. And as I had mentioned before, if you are looking for some exciting lessons on the not so sexy stuff of how to run an agency and how to be successful, please go to our website, dudeschool.io. It's totally free, and we have all kinds of lessons on how to run your agency, how to hire people. Actually, we have a great training on how to hire the perfect project manager. So you can go and get all these lessons 100% free. Just go to dudeschool.io. I guarantee you, you will not be sorry that you went and watched our amazing stuff. So on today's episode, I'm very, very excited because we have an awesome agency owner named Jackie Hermes, CEO. Her agency is called Accelity. I always feel like I don't say that name right, but Accelity, and really, really savvy entrepreneur. She's just a very good business owner in general, and has all of her numbers dialed in, is very, very passionate about hiring and scaling. She's got about 20 team members right now, which is absolutely incredible. So very excited about this interview. And if you ever want to learn the important things that it takes to run a financially successful agency, definitely want to pay attention to this one. So enjoy the interview, and see you later. Hey, Jackie, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
Doing very well. Thanks so much for being on our show.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me.
And I'm very excited to hear about all the amazing things that you guys are doing at Accelity. Hopefully, I said that right.
You sure did. Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect. But of course, we always start with our roundtable discussion. And yeah, originally, I kind of wanted to ask you about the pilot thing, but I'm glad that you're a good sport and we can talk about something that's much more interesting to me and hopefully to our listeners as well, which is, you are a obviously female entrepreneur and owner of a marketing agency, and digital marketing is absurdly white male dominated in terms of ownership, as well as
hmm
representation on the stages and stuff. So, what I would love to talk about is kind of like your experiences being a woman owner in this very male dominated industry, and kind of the things that you've learned along the way growing your amazing company.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting place to be because I think that women, not that you have an uphill battle, though it's proven that they do, right? Especially in an industry that is mostly white male, like you said.
Yep.
But I think that women are sometimes treated in a little bit different way, right? Like even our clients are mostly male as
Hmm.
well. And men often have just a different energy, a different way of showing up, or a different way of speaking to people than women do,
Hmm.
right? And so it's like figuring out how to come to the table and have those conversations where it's not always like I think a lot of women professionals tend to think that like aggressive conversations happen with men, and especially in digital marketing where not everything always goes right. You're constantly debating about everything, right?
Right. Right.
And so it's kind of teaching them how to have those conversations, stand up for themselves, and have tough conversations with people. So that has been a passion of mine throughout my career.
Yeah, I was checking out your LinkedIn too. I think that you also run kind of like a woman entrepreneur network thing too.
Yeah, Women's
So
Entrepreneurship Week.
so where do you think the attitudes that you were just addressing of, women having to learn how to show up differently, where do you think that comes from?
Oh boy. I mean, like in a general sense for all women,
Well, let's
or
just take entrepreneurial and maybe even more specifically marketing agency owner women. What are some of the things that you see that they have to learn, and where does the lack of knowledge stem from?
I mean, I think that some things men are taught growing up or in
Mm,
childhood that women aren't. I mean, for
yeah.
example, a lot of boys are taught to ask for what they want. A lot of women are not taught that it's okay to show up in the workplace and say, I want a raise, or I have been working here and I think I deserve a promotion and I want to put my hat in the ring. I think men are often naturally more competitive. And all of these things have served me well professionally. And I naturally have a little bit more of that male energy than I think a lot of women do.
Mhm.
But it's something that you kind of have to flex into as a woman sometimes.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, did you play sports growing up as a kid?
I was a cheerleader, actually.
Ah, okay. So you did have some involvement in a team and, leadership
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, there's a direct correlation between Title IX, which if you know what Title IX is in the States,
Hmm.
the law. Okay. There's a direct correlation between women in leadership positions in corporate America and the start of Title IX. So I think one of the arguments that a lot of people make is that that was one of the things that kind of inspired women to believe in themselves. And now
Hmm.
we see the results of that 50 years later, which is pretty
Hmm.
cool.
I mean,
Um,
it's still something that women have to learn today, though. I have two little girls.
mhm,
I mean, they're not even little, they're 10 and 14, but
mhm.
you have to teach them how to use one does not say what she wants and she's quiet and she's a little more timid. And the other one is like super outgoing and you know exactly what she wants at all times, right? So they're learning different things and they're both kind of learning how to meet in the middle. But I don't think that it's a conscious thing that girls and women are always taught, and something that I would like to change for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like at our company, I don't have the exact stats, but I think we're right around 50% men, women, which is
Hmm.
unusual for a development, company.
Hmm.
And our female employees, what I've noticed is that it takes them a lot longer to really start to believe in themselves. And most of our staff are in Mexico, so it's a different culture than the United States. But in general, it takes a lot more convincing to be like, hey, yeah, you can do this. Like, I know that you can do this. Whereas the guys, it's kind of like on the opposite, where they're like, I can do it. And then like they're overconfident and then they end up
Hmm.
dropping the ball, so they take a little hit to the ego, which is good, got to bring them back down to reality. But that's definitely an interesting dynamic that we've learned here at Dude. I'm just curious if you've had similar experiences at your agency.
Yeah, for sure. And some of the women on my team have been working under me for years, and
Hmm.
now they come and negotiate salary with me or tell me that they deserve a promotion, and they're like, "You taught me how to do this, so
Yeah.
give me the money." And I love that. I think
Yeah, me
it's
too. I love it.
amazing.
I
I
love
think
it
it's
too.
so cool. And then, I mean, one of our core values is being bold, and we look for people that are bold or are moldable and coachable and want
Hmm.
to learn how to be more bold in the things that they ask, or like asking smart questions is a really important thing in digital marketing. Is not
Hmm.
just working with a client and saying like, oh yeah, that sounds good. It's like you have to go 10 layers deeper to really understand the why and if this
Hmm.
is the best approach, and that's the only way that you'll be successful. So yeah, I definitely have seen that, but it's something that we are very consciously training for internally.
Awesome. All right. Well,
Mhm.
thanks for so much for chatting about this. I could talk about this
Yeah.
for a long time. Studied sociology in college, so I love talking about, the way that culture influences the way that we live and things like that. But
Hmm.
yeah. So awesome. Let's move into why we're all here, which is talking about your amazing agency, Accelity. So really quickly, give us kind of like your value proposition or your USP or, your one liner.
Yeah, we work with B2B SaaS companies, and they are typically pre-revenue funded up to about 30, 40 million, sometimes private equity owned as well. And we work with them to grow faster. Typically, especially companies that are just getting started, it's very difficult for them to understand what's going to bring the most value. And a lot of them don't stick with activities long enough to even see the benefit out of it. So we kind of come in and direct them. A lot of our clients, we work with them all the way from the beginning of the launch up to when they start hiring people and us helping them figure out who they should hire and how and all that good stuff.
Very, very interesting. So, really
Yeah.
quickly, the first question I have, why pre-revenue? Because, most of the companies that are working with other, let's just say companies that have not or that have not gotten funding, that have bootstrapped, they have to
Hmm.
see a return on investment. So like
Yes.
why did you guys decide to work with pre-revenue startups and SaaS
We
startups?
Yeah, we usually SaaS companies is my background, so that's
Okay.
kind of my baby. And I actually have pulled a number of my team members over from the company that we all worked at, so they all have the SaaS experience as well. We usually do not work with bootstrapped pre-revenue,
Mhm.
but we have actually one of our clients that's been with us the longest was bootstrapped pre-revenue when we took them on. And it was like a conversation, hey, I have this idea and I might want to talk to you about it in the future, until he hired a professional CEO and they were emailing me a year later wanting to talk to us. So we got the opportunity to launch that entire product. And now those are risky relationships for us because, it's like prying dollars out of hands and it's like, what am I going to get out of this?
Yeah.
But they're also some of the most fun because they are high pressure situations. And I think we have a team that works well in that kind of situation where we're trying to tweak and really figure out what works and how we can get the best return for clients.
When you're working with your pre-revenue funded startups, what are some of the metrics that they use to gauge success?
Yeah. At the beginning, I mean, a lot of times they're looking for leads, and that's an interesting conversation because marketing, especially inbound marketing, is not designed to generate leads quickly. So
Hmm.
a lot of times we are looking for things like quick wins. So, can we get opportunities in your pipeline in the near term? And can we set a foundation for you in the long term? So, the goal tracking looks different over time. Um, yeah, I guess that's probably the best summary.
Good, good. I can live with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of your growth, your agency is right around 20-ish staff, which is
Yeah.
amazing. And you had mentioned to us that you're really focused on growth, hiring, and culture. So just
Mhm.
give us the little summary as to what's your main focus for the next 90 days.
As far as hiring or
Well, growth, hiring, and culture.
yeah. I mean, hiring for growth is tricky because we're a bootstrapped company.
Yep.
And so we have never raised a dollar. And it's always a delicate dance of wanting to hire for growth so that we're not putting too much pressure on people and making sure that we have people fully trained by the time we bring in new
Hmm.
accounts that they need to service. And as an agency, we churn clients and employees sometimes churn as well.
Hmm.
So it's definitely, we have put some systems in place to help us understand what capacity looks like on the team. We do a lot of surveying of the team and of our clients to understand how happy they are and how
Hmm.
likely they are to stick around. So we kind of have our own little formula. And I
Yeah, that's
think
perfect.
culture wise, it's always been important to me to have a really healthy culture, but it's even become more so in the last year during this pandemic and everything that's been happening. I think that we really were able to connect with all of our employees on a much more just human level in the
Hmm.
last year. And it's just, I mean, the entire conversation I think has changed where we're talking to people more about feelings and feedback and collaboration. And it's not just like I hope that no one at my company feels like, like they're just here to punch the clock and work is work.
Yeah, I love that. We actually started where we pay for therapy sessions. So if they want, mental health therapy, we'll pay for 2 sessions a month.
Mhm.
And then if they want to do, every single week, then they can just pay for that out of pocket. And that's been very, very helpful, and definitely sets us apart because there aren't many companies, at least down here in Mexico, that are willing to do that for their team members. So,
I've actually never heard of a company doing that before. So that's really cool.
oh, it's fantastic. I mean, I'm a huge
Yeah.
advocate of mental health therapy in general,
Yeah.
as is my fiance who runs our HR and finance, and so it was kind of a no-brainer for us to be able to put this together.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
um,
I I think that therapy needs to be normalized for a lot of people, and like my kiddos, they all go to therapy,
yeah,
and sometimes they're like, "Oh, we have to go to therapy," and I'm like, I'm sure you have stuff to talk about. You're going to therapy," and I
yeah.
want them to know that it's something that is very normal for people to do and have like an outlet and guidance outside of me, who they don't listen to anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most people don't really get any sort of education in terms of how to properly manage emotions.
Hmm.
And especially if you're an agency owner or you work in an agency environment, there's lots of emotions going on. It's a crazy freaking business. There's always
Hmm.
stuff going on. You're always feeling stressed. And then you top COVID on top of that. It's one of the reasons why so many people are on edge right now.
Yeah.
And so like I view therapy as just a way, well, my therapist, my first one that I went to, Susan, who basically saved my life. she gave me these techniques to help manage these crazy emotions that I was going through, because my dad had died of cancer, and then like I'd lost all my money and all kinds of stuff. So it was a really, really difficult time. And so she just gave me a framework for like, hey, when this happens, how about you look at it this way as opposed to this way? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that
I
really,
guess
really helped.
I actually never even thought about doing, like, I did not grow up in therapy, and therapy was kind of taboo
Taboo. Yeah. Oh yeah,
when I
for
was
sure.
little. And so that really just started for me maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where I was
Hmm.
like, wow, I do have control over this stuff, and I can put systems in place that will help me change my mindset and manage stress and all of that kind of stuff. Because I was just a ball of stress and had a big old temper when I was younger. So
Oh yeah.
that's changed a lot, which I'm very thankful for.
Well, and you look at the result now, you have this growing agency, right? And
Yeah.
things are moving in the right direction. So I think that it's 100%, in part at least due to the work that you did on yourself. A great job on that.
The
Pat yourself on the
the
back.
the timeline corresponds exactly with when I started working on myself and the company started growing.
Oh
So,
man. So like this is one of the things. So we teach a mastermind for all of our agencies, agency clients. It's the first one is called level one, and it's included. And that's the first thing that we talk about is that
mhm,
like, hey, like if you don't have these four aspects of your life in order, I guarantee you the business is going to struggle, because the
yep,
business is really an outcome of the habits that you've implemented in these other areas of your life. And you can try as hard as you want, but it's really, really hard to get the outcome that you're looking for on the business if you don't fix all this stuff that's going on around in your head. um, and what's very interesting is that the guys always fight it. The women are like, yeah, this totally works. And then who ends up getting the most out of the first mastermind? The women, 100% all the time. So it's really, really interesting. And like as we started the show talking about some of the challenges that women have, potentially in running a business and asking for what they want. It's also a strength too when they get into a mastermind situation, because they're much more likely to embrace these new concepts. And at least in terms of what I've seen, they're more eager to adapt than the men.
And funny, I started not eager to adapt because I told you I have lots of male energy typically,
Hmm.
and I'm very and so I was very skeptical for a long
Hmm.
time, and then finally I would have been one of the stubborn ones that was like, no, thank you, in your mastermind.
Yeah, you come
Funny.
around eventually. So, all right.
Yep.
I want to talk specifically about hiring, because I want to make sure that we make the most of our time. The
Yeah.
hiring processes that you use, because that's definitely something that a lot of people struggle with. I'm very proud of our hiring culture that we've created here at Dude. But I want to hear specifically about your process, because you said that you guys are growing. And so
Mhm.
what are some of the metrics that you look at to decide, is it a revenue target? Or, obviously you take into consideration your pipeline, but how do you determine, okay, now I need to hire this person. Now I need to hire this person, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's more, we look at numbers. So we look
Yes.
at revenue and pipeline, and we look at things like capacity planning and
Hmm.
in theory. So when we break down all of the numbers, how much time does each role spend in an account? And in theory, how many accounts could they work with? Right.
Perfect. I love it.
And so we look at all of that, but we realized we put all of these systems in place, but we weren't asking the people doing the work how they felt. And
Hmm.
so when you're making decisions based on data, it's and they're very well informed, but it doesn't take into account the person that is working on three larger accounts that may feel fine because only have those three accounts that they're working with, versus a person who's working on 7 or 8 smaller accounts, and they actually can take on a little bit less than what the spreadsheets say,
Hmm.
because they have all of it's the switching costs, and it's you can only keep so much in your mind. And
Hmm.
so we didn't ask those questions, and we didn't realize that we should be until we got feedback from an exit interview. And I was like, it makes so much sense, but it's
Yep.
just something that we didn't think about. So it's, I think, as with marketing, it's a little bit of an art and a little bit of a science, but we're tracking all of the data, and then having really, I mean, we've talked to our team often about how they're feeling about capacity. We use the
Yep.
like green, yellow, red, how are you feeling this week
Yeah.
system. So yeah.
That's perfect. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. We actually learned the same thing, because like on paper, everything should pencil out, but
Yeah.
you do have to, I like to say that there's a balance, right? You do have to take the data as a starting point, but then let's talk to our folks and figure out like, is this actually realistic? Even though
Mhm.
they have 166 hours in a month or whatever that number is, I can never remember. Um, you know, you can't put 166 hours of client work on their plate or they're going to crack. There's
Mhm.
just nobody on earth who can run at that insane pace the whole time, right? So maybe you work on, hey, what's our baseline that we need to get out of in terms of like hours, that we can put towards project labor and project and clients, and
Mhm.
then use that and then reevaluate and be like, hey, this is working, or the person says, I can handle more, give me more, give me more. That's really
Yeah.
really insightful.
I think it is important too to put a culture in place where people are going to tell you, I want
Yes.
more work, or they are going to tell you, I feel overwhelmed. Because, especially in a lot of organizations, communicating up to your boss or your boss's boss is scary for a lot of people. And that's something we've been working on a ton lately is like, how can we get people to be really honest? And I remember even when I was younger, like, if I'm honest, is my job in jeopardy? Or,
Mhm.
the different things that a lot of employees think. So just trying to like stand in their shoes and understand how to have like a really open and honest relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I read, and I can't remember the book now, but one of the main reasons why a team will fall apart and have infighting is because they feel like their job is at risk, right? So, like, if like COVID, perfect example. Like, nobody knew what was going to
Mhm.
happen. I don't know if you guys took a hit a year ago
Mhm.
because we did. We lost, I think it was
Big.
18%
Yep.
in a couple of days. And so then everybody's worried about their job, and then sometimes what will happen is if people are basically fighting for this small pool of resources, start to have some breakdowns within the company culture as well. Are there some things that you do to help your client, your team members feel like they have a little bit of security, a little bit more security in the company, so they can focus on the task and not necessarily like, how am I going to get fed in 2 weeks?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty honest with them. They all know coming in, we're not a huge company, right? We have 20 employees and there's this level of uncertainty that comes with that. So I think that only certain people can and should work at a company of our size. And so one is being super, super honest about that in the hiring process and making it very clear. Like being adaptable is very important to us and things change often around here, and making sure that they're comfortable with that. But then I think there's a level of transparency that's required to make your team feel safe as well. So, for example, in COVID, we lost 35% of our revenue in the
Yeah.
first 2 months of COVID, and it was
Mhm.
rough. And I mean, we weren't selling during that time hardly at all. Luckily, we were able to grow back to where we started by August of last
Mhm.
year, but we did end up furloughing the team, and we brought everyone down to 80% across the board. So every single person on the team kind of took the same cut, I guess. It was that or lay people off. I didn't want to lay people off. And I
Right.
told them, this is what's happening. This is specifically why it's happening. Here's where we need to get to. We're applying for VP. We are trying to build a pipeline back up, and we're going to be super honest and open with you about where we are and just continue to update them. And I think that it was crazy because I expected people to be scared or leave, but everyone kind of dug in even
Yes.
more, which was really cool. And I think that it is all because of the amount of transparency. And when you are that transparent with your team, it's really cool what you can see out of team members. Like, I have a designer on my team that's been with us for 3 years. She started straight out of college.
Mhm.
Now, when we do like our offsite meetings or like our town hall type meetings, she asks the smartest freaking business questions I've ever heard. And you just wouldn't expect that out of someone who graduated from art school and came on as a designer 3 years ago, right? Like it's just not something that I would have put together, but I think it gives them an opportunity to understand like how a business operates and like what all goes into a margin and what we aim for and how we spend money and how raises happen and all of that kind of stuff. So
Love it. I mean, you are literally, what's the word? I don't know if it's poster child or you are a great model for having that level of transparency about the numbers with your people, because so many agency owners are scared to tell their team members when times are good, because they think that everybody's going to ask for a raise, which is possible.
Mhm.
And then they're afraid to tell them when times are bad because they're afraid that everybody's going to quit. And so you're always kind of like, dancing around the topic. We run a business. Like everybody knows that we are here to make money. And so I always believe that if you have these amazing people, like, let them in on what's going on. You're doing them a disservice, especially if there's something wrong in the company, doing them a huge disservice to not let them know about the reality.
Yeah.
And if you have a great team, you will see them band together and help you get through the difficult times. It's one of the coolest things ever. Like, as you witnessed, we had the same thing, like back in February last year, March of last year. We had to have a kind of like a family meeting, and we brought everybody in, and we're like, hey, we're having to, put these people reduced hours. We're consolidating a couple of the teams, and I honestly, guys, like, I don't have all the answers for you right now, and I know that that's unsettling to hear, but I will not stop until we get everybody back and that things are back on track. And luckily, we ended up getting almost all the revenue back in April. We brought all the team members back to full time, and then after that, it was just explosive growth, which has been
Mhm.
fantastic. But yeah, that's one of the things as an owner, is you do have to have those really difficult conversations from time to time, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you get to see what your team is really made of, which is awesome.
Exactly. And I mean, I've been in the shoes of the owner who didn't want to tell people about hard times. I mean, years ago,
Hmm.
especially as a bootstrap company, I had to make decisions between paying myself and paying my team, or sometimes not even really having enough money to pay my team and trying to figure out where that money was going to come from.
Oh,
And at that point, I was not telling anyone, but I was so stressed that after, this was probably like a 4-month period where I was just like, I'm so stressed out. I'm not telling anyone ever anything. And we had a small team. There was like 6 of us. They were all like, "Oh, we knew something was off. Like,
yeah.
you might as well have just told us because you acted weird for 4 whole months." And I was like, "Well, that was dumb. I should have just said something about it." And
Yeah.
that taught me a huge lesson at that time. So I definitely learned from it since.
Great. All right. Last question.
Yeah.
Agencies and profitability, usually not the best at even knowing what their profitability is.
Mhm.
But as you had mentioned, margins are really slim typically, but you have created a unique model that really helps you to have good numbers. Can you tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about what are some of the things that you're doing that has helped you to be financially a stronger company?
Yeah, I mean, we track profitability pretty closely.
For every single client?
It's more broad than that, but we're
Okay.
looking at it on a rolling basis. So we're looking at it for the whole company more because I mean, every single client, there is some more expensive talents on clients and some not. And so rather than get that nitty gritty, I watch it on a weekly or biweekly basis.
Hmm.
But also knowing that it can trend up or down. For example, our profitability last year was much higher than it has been the first 2 months of this year. And I
Hmm.
know all of the reasons why, and I know where we want to get back to. I would say we price increase clients regularly, which I think is something a lot of agencies are scared to do. We don't want to get into like commodity sale where we're just trying to give them the best price. We are typically trying to show a little bit more valuable value. And so that definitely helps. I mean, I think when you see numbers, well, one, you have to track the numbers and you have to be not afraid to look at them, which I was in that boat years ago where I was like,
Do you have a full-time CFO, or do you have like a bookkeeper that you talk to regularly?
yeah. So my tax accountant actually I talk to all the time and ask her tons
Perfect.
of questions. Part-time CFO, and then we actually use Bench, which
Oh,
is like
cool.
an online bookkeeping service, and they're fantastic. We've been using them for years. But I mean, looking at those numbers and then figuring out what to do if they're not where you want them to be. One book that I read is called Profit First. I think it might be
Oh,
right
yeah.
here. Yeah. Have you read that book?
Oh, yeah. We
Yeah,
make all of our clients that go into the mastermind read that book too.
yeah. That changed my mind a lot about how to look at money in my business and doing things like, okay, if we're not where we need to be, can I cut costs in this area? Do we need all of these? And how can I pull money out before we start making spending decisions?
Yep.
And that really changed my mindset as well. So I would definitely suggest reading that book.
100%. I'm glad you brought that up too. Well, actually, one of
Mhm.
our agencies started out as, well, he's an accountant, and then he became a profit first consultant or whatever. And then he became an
Cool.
agency. So it's kind of funny because he's got all those financial tools in his tool belt already, which is usually the opposite with agency
Mhm.
people. And now, he's learning how to run the agency more efficiently too. So,
I,
all right.
I remember when I started business coaching, I remember I was like nearly in tears trying to figure out how to look at financial statements and fill out this scorecard that my coach makes me fill out every month. And now 6 years later, I'm like, oh, okay, this is easy. But at the time, I was like, I hate this so much.
Well,
I'm not a
that's the
numbers
key.
person.
See, this is the key that nobody really wants to talk about is that the key to running a successful agency is mastering the non-sexy stuff of running an agency. Got to know how
So
to do the
true.
numbers. You got to know how to hire. You got to know how to manage and lead. Have to know how to communicate, and you have to know the operational flows and making sure that we're actually staying within budget on all these projects. That shit ain't fun. But if
Hmm.
you want to make money, and you're a perfect testament to that, if you want to make money, you got to learn how to do these things.
You
So
do. Fight through it. Get a
yeah.
business coach too.
Yeah, love it.
Helpful.
All right, Jackie. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
I spend so much time on LinkedIn. It's almost not funny anymore, but that's the best spot.
Okay, cool. And who would be the perfect person to reach out to you, whether they want to hire you or maybe they have a referral for you?
Yeah, so those B2B SaaS companies, awesome. Anyone who provides services that are in alignment with ours, we come across companies all the time that need those outsourced CFOs or the sales trainers or someone who's going to help them build a sales team or whoever. So
Hmm.
happy to evaluate those partnerships as well.
Fantastic. Love it. Awesome. Thanks so much for being on the show. And to all of our listeners, thank you all for tuning in today. And make sure that you return next Thursday and every Thursday for the next episode of Operation Agency Freedom.